Well, it's after the car show and I'm sitting at home. I'm thinking to myself while the girls are inside talking. And daughter's on the Xbox playing some goat simulator thing where you go around and you literally run a goat through a city and you just trash everything. This goat runs into people, blows up cars. Never seen anything like this in my life. This stuff these kids are so excited about doing. She was so excited to get home and jump on the Xbox to play this goat simulator where she gets to run around as a goat just destroying everything. I'm thinking to myself, what the hell's wrong with these kids, man? I'd be excited to come home and even just play a regular video game or something like that. Play Barbies or Color or, you know. She was excited to come home and play the goat simulator. It's my juicy story. While everybody's occupied inside and I'm not needed for anything. I worked for a bus company in Big Rock, Illinois. And this small town, Central State Bus Sales. And I was one of their mechanics. Worked on anything from Ford to Bluebird stuff, international stuff, Cummins stuff, didn't matter what it was. And it was actually when I ran into my first experience with the Ford propane V10s that were coupled to the diesel transmissions. And the programming was failing. The diesel transmissions weren't very compatible with the propane V10 because the propane V10 was such a high revving engine compared to the diesel that when they would shift the transmission through the programming, it was way too high of an RPM for the transmission to be shifting, and eventually low mile 10, 5, 10, 15,000 mile buses, propane injected buses, the transits were gone. We were having to put transmissions in them all the time. That was nothing uncommon for those because they were using the wrong application in this design. I got a better job offer. Somebody offered me a union job, an entry starting position. They said, well, we'll start you at $27 an hour as a feeler for 90 days. And once you make the 90 days, on the 91st day, we'll sign you straight into the union as a journeyman diesel mechanic here at our shop. And it was a basic earth moving, excavation, buildings, any kind of like drainage type stuff. They did a lot of heavy digging and setting up foundations, or like the base stuff for people to come in and actually start building the building. They did all the moving work, the dirt sorting and all kinds of stuff. And I worked for this company. They had a fleet of Mack trucks. Everything was Mack. And I came in the door, took the job. After 90 days, I was supposed to go to full-fledged union stuff. And, like, I think it was like $33, $34 an hour pay. So I'm in the door. Everything's going well. I mean, I'm ripping entire AC systems out of trucks, putting new evaporators in it, new AC compressors in it, ripping transmissions out, putting clutches in trucks, fixing some pretty major problems that they didn't have anybody to fix. They did have a mechanic there that was very experienced, and he probably could have got the job done, but he'd never done that kind of work before. He was always a basic equipment mechanic, a maintenance mechanic. He was never a mechanic that would rip apart engines and stuff like that, just pulleys, belts, conveyors, industrial type stuff. So I came in 90 days and I got every single truck up and running and on the road safely, AC systems working, the whole 9 yards. So it was something that, I was very accustomed to. It was easy work for me. And they even had like an old 70s model double shifter Mack truck that they wanted restored. And in that 90 days, I finished the restoration job from the mechanic before and cab painted. We even had a guy come in where I helped him prep everything. He was actually a painter. And I would stay late at night, prep everything with him, help him sand everything down. And he was actually the professional that painted because I didn't paint. But it was that old Emron paint. I'm sure some of you know that old Emron paint. It sprays on real thick, has a real nice deep type finish to it, almost like the old lacquer paint from like back in the 70s and stuff. And you got to know how to spray that stuff because you'll screw it up. And got the truck painted, everything completely done. Next thing you know, 91st day rolls around. I'm excited to come to work because I know that day I'm going to get signed into the union. I get a notification about 2 hours after being at work that I'm being let go. And I was like, I don't understand. I made my 91 days. All the equipment's fixed. I went above and beyond. I was here 15, 20 minutes early every single day, leaving my shop to go out in the field to fix stuff that's broke down in the field, working on excavators and everything else that I wasn't even licensed to work on, but I still did it anyway because I had the experience. Why am I being let go? What did I do wrong? Well, we just feel like we don't need you anymore. So I drive down the road to talk to the union rep to let him know what's going on, and he said, I got notification right after you got notification that they won't be signing you. I said, well, what are you going to do about it? This is bullshit. They can't just go 91 days and then all of a sudden just boot you out. And he said, unfortunately, they can. It's a crooked business, and that's how some of these companies do. What they basically did was they brought you in for 90 days. They used you to the max at a discounted rate, and basically you got all their stuff up and running and fixed, and now they push you right out the door. That's how they abuse good mechanics. And then they'll hire some guy at $20 an hour to come in and just maintain everything that you fixed. And he said, unfortunately, this is what we run into more than you think. And until you actually have a union card signed, there's nothing that we can do about it because you don't technically, you're not technically represented by us right now. And there's nothing I can do. And I said, this is fucking bullshit, man. You mean to tell me there's no way that you can do anything about this? They basically used me for 90 days. Their whole fleet of trucks running, hydraulic rams replaced. I mean, pulling boxes with a crane off the back of trucks, putting new roll pins and stuff in, pivot point pins, running new hydraulic lines throughout this whole thing. Had presses in the shop where I made my own hydraulic lines and everything else. And you mean to tell me that this is what you're going to let these people do to me? I said, yeah, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do. Not a single thing. With this being an at-will state, they can let you go at any time until you get signed into the union, so you get no help. And with us supposed to come out there this afternoon and sign you, and you being fired before that, nothing that we can do. I was a little younger, a little bit more hot-headed than what I am now. What ended up happening is I left, took my tools, got a better job somewhere else, making $36 an hour instead of the $34 that they were going to pay me. Told my new employer what happened. And I sat down at home, I was drinking a few beers, and I said, you know what, I can't just, this is weeks after all this happened. I just can't let this go. I can't let this go this easy. I got to do something about this because these guys are going to do this to somebody else. And it's a very, very, very sad world that we live in when people get away with stuff like this and nobody holds them accountable. So I called the EPA, and I called the local EPA. No, I called the main EPA number. They put me in touch with the local EPA, and they were like, "So what's going on? What? I mean, I don't understand. Like, what? You're telling me that they're washing trucks out back of the establishment with hydraulic fluid and stuff all over their diesel, all over the diesel tanks, and there's hydraulic fluid on the truck, and they're just washing this out onto the ground, and it's going into the sewer drains. And then, from what I understand on that particular property, there's a relief drain that goes into a retention pond that actually has fish and stuff in it, so that would contaminate natural wildlife and stuff. This is a huge problem. You understand the claims that you're making? Because if the claims that you're making aren't true, we could go after you and fine you for making false claims against a company. But at the same time, if the claims that you're making are true, and we go out there and we go into those sewer systems and we test that water, we actually get in the sewers, we test, we take samples, we go to the water, we take samples, we go in the establishment, we take samples, and it could be pretty bad for either one of you. So what's going on here? Is this legit? And I said, absolutely 100% legit. Every day these guys come back from the job, right in the parking lot, right over the retention pond, the drain that relieves itself into the retention pond and the sewer, some kind of split type system. Oh yeah. And then the amount of stuff that's been dumped down the drains in the shop and everything else that's not supposed to be there, if you know what I mean, there's stuff there too. They went out and they tested. I got a call back a week later saying that they were fined heavily. And then one of the guys that worked there was like, dude, what did you do? And I was like, I'm not going to let somebody get away with stuff like this, man. I had to make them pay one way or another, and it may have not been the right thing to do, but I wanted to make them hurt and make them feel for what they did to me and what they could potentially do to other people, to think twice about it. And I made it known that I was the one that reported them. I made it very, very clear that I was the one who reported them. I didn't hide anything. I wasn't a coward about it. I sent them an email saying that I was turning them into the EPA. Their practices were poor, how they treat people was poor, and that you can't do stuff like this. And this is, you reap what you sow. They went out there and they tested everything. They found coolant, they found oil. He said they were fined over $100,000, and they had to put spill stations at all four corners of the building. These spill stations are $10,000 to $15,000 a piece. They had to have certain types of sand and chemical there to actually clean up spills, and retention rags and everything else that were in the base of these spill stations. I feel being vengeful is wrong, but at the same time, it sure made me fucking feel good, man. It made me feel good about everything that I did. To just pay them back for something that they did to me, instead of signing a guy and paying him what he's worth, taking care of him and having a good mechanic on staff, you used a guy that doesn't believe in using other people. Turn around and bit you in the ass. I know I might catch some heat for this, but let me know what you guys think.